The FBI is the most sophisticated law enforcement agency in the world, and sometimes they pursue a crime that fundamentally shatters the definition of family. When a loving mother and her 2 young daughters vanish in the quiet, suburban tranquility of Frederick, Colorado, the immediate public response is panic. How could this happen to them?
Wait. Before we dive into the horrifying details of how a father could commit the ultimate act of betrayal against his pregnant wife and 2 innocent little girls, ask yourself this. Why are you here? Is it just for the shocking story, or is it because you believe that Shannan, Bella, and Celeste deserve to be remembered, that their tragedy must serve as a global warning? If you truly believe their lives mattered, if you believe their story should reach every single person who needs to see the warning signs, then you need to do one simple thing right now. Hit that subscribe button. Don't let the algorithm decide that this story isn't important enough to be shown. Your subscription is your commitment to remembrance.
They were perfect. The Bureau mobilizes, but the case is strange. There are no signs of forced entry, no struggle, and the heartbroken husband, Chris Watts, is right there, helping. Yet, the trained investigators sense a terrifying vacuum beneath the surface. They are about to uncover a betrayal so profound, a horror so cold and calculated, that it would redefine the term monster.
It's a hot August morning in Frederick, Colorado. A concerned friend, Nicole Atkinson, arrives at the Watts family home. Shannan Watts, who is 15 weeks pregnant, is not answering her phone, and Nicole knows something is terribly wrong. Nicole calls the police. Officers arrive and meet the husband, Chris Watts. Detectives are immediately struck by the scene. The house is immaculately clean. There's no sign of disturbance. The girls' favorite blankets are neatly folded. Chris is calm, almost eerily composed, as he lets police search. He tells them his wife, Shannan, and their daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, vanished sometime after he left for work before 5 a.m. He says they must have left to visit a friend. When you first watched the news reports of a distraught Chris Watts appealing to the public, did your gut tell you something was wrong, or did you believe his heartbroken performance? But a mother of 2 toddlers doesn't simply disappear. The police escalate the investigation, immediately calling in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI, and the FBI. FBI Special Agent Graham and his team start pulling apart the perfect facade. The first crucial detail: Shannan left behind her phone, car, and keys. She didn't run. She was gone. Chris Watts plays the role of the distraught husband perfectly, going on national television to make a tearful plea. Investigators, however, are focused on the one person who isn't searching, Chris. They bring him in for intense questioning. When he is asked to take a polygraph test, he agrees. During the polygraph, Chris fails spectacularly. The examiner notes an extreme level of deception. This is the crack in the dam. The FBI knows that the distressed husband is now their primary suspect. They ramp up the pressure. They confront him with his failed test and the fact that there are inconsistencies in his story, like the way he moved his work truck hours after he claimed the family disappeared. Facing irrefutable evidence that he is lying, Chris Watts finally starts to break. The perfect husband gives a partial confession, offering a new, monstrous lie designed to save himself. In his first, self-serving confession, Chris claims that Shannan murdered the children in a fit of rage after he told her he wanted a separation. He claims he then strangled Shannan in a blind, sudden rage. This mirrors the tactic used by the Longo killer, blaming the dead wife to save himself. But investigators immediately see through the emotional, spontaneous facade. A murder of a pregnant woman and 2 toddlers is not sudden, it's preparation. Why do you think calculated killers like Chris Watts and Christian Longo try to use the blame the dead mother defense? Is it arrogance, or a desperate ploy for sympathy? Using this coerced admission, Chris leads investigators to the Anadarko petroleum site where he worked. The location is remote, vast, and terrifyingly industrial. In the darkness, under the floodlights of the FBI team, Chris points to 3 distinct spots. The horror is about to be revealed. The bodies are found. Shannan Watts was buried in a shallow grave on the industrial property. But the method used for the girls was far more chilling. Chris Watts revealed that his 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, were not buried. They had been forced through the small, dangerous hatch of 2 massive oil storage tanks and submerged in crude oil for days. The images, which police cannot forget, are horrific. The recovery required draining the massive tanks and was a painful, meticulous process. These were children who loved their father, discarded in a toxic industrial grave. The autopsy later confirmed the true, devastating sequence of events. Shannan had been strangled. The girls were smothered, the younger one's blanket reportedly still smelling faintly of pizza when she was recovered. Investigators realized the full, cold scope of the crime. Chris didn't snap. He didn't rage. He calculated. The murder of his family was the solution to a simple problem. He wanted a new life with his mistress. The financial pressures, the resentment over Shannan's control, and the desire for a clean break all converged into this single, absolute act of destruction. Using this coerced admission, Chris leads investigators to the Anadarko petroleum site where he worked. The location is remote, vast, and terrifyingly industrial. In the darkness, under the floodlights of the FBI team, Chris points to 3 distinct spots. The horror is about to be revealed. The bodies are found. Shannan Watts was buried in a shallow grave on the industrial property. But the method used for the girls was far more chilling. Chris Watts revealed that his 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, were not buried. They had been forced through the small, dangerous hatch of 2 massive oil storage tanks and submerged in crude oil for days. The images, which police cannot forget, are horrific. The recovery required draining the massive tanks and was a painful, meticulous process. These were children who loved their father, discarded in a toxic industrial grave. The autopsy later confirmed the true, devastating sequence of events. Shannan had been strangled. The girls were smothered, the younger one's blanket reportedly still smelling faintly of pizza when she was recovered. Investigators realized the full, cold scope of the crime. Chris didn't snap. He didn't rage. He calculated. The murder of his family was the solution to a simple problem. He wanted a new life with his mistress. Financial pressures, the resentment over Shannan's control, and the desire for a clean break all converged into this single, absolute act of destruction. The FBI's background search on Chris Watts confirms the deception. He wasn't the perfect husband. He was running up debt, obsessing over fitness, and conducting an intense affair. His mistress, Nicole Kessinger, testified that Chris told her he was separated. He crafted an entire life of lies just to maintain his freedom and image. Under the eventual weight of evidence and his life sentence, Chris gave a full, terrifying confession from prison. He admitted to killing all 3. The reality was more brutal than the lie. Chris strangled Shannan in the home. Bella, the 4-year-old, watched him drag her mother's body. She asked, "Daddy, what are you doing to Mommy?" He replied, "Mommy is sick." He then drove the girls 40 miles to the oil field, knowing exactly what he was going to do. The children, who were still alive, pleaded for their lives before he forced them into the tanks. He admitted the girls may have survived for several minutes inside the crude oil. What is the most chilling detail about this case? The premeditation, or the fact that Bella asked her father what he was doing to her mother? To avoid the death penalty, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder, including the unborn child, Nico. Shannan's parents opposed the death penalty, stating they couldn't bear to lose anyone else. During the sentencing, the true scope of the community's outrage was felt. Shannan's father, Frank Razuchek, spoke directly to Watts. "You don't exist to me anymore." Chris Watts was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. The judge emphasized the legacy of Shannan, Bella, and Celeste Watts is one of beautiful lives stolen by the ultimate betrayal. Their final moments were filled with the cold, hard reality that the person they trusted most was their killer. We tell these stories not for shock value alone, but to ensure that the manipulation, the lies, and the red flags are never ignored again. If the horror of this betrayal has made you pause, if it has reinforced your commitment to protect the vulnerable, then you cannot let their story end here. Chris Watts tried to wipe his family away, to erase their very existence. Do not let the algorithm do his work for him. Every single time you subscribe, you are actively fighting that erasure. You are ensuring that Shannan, Bella, and Celeste are remembered, not as victims, but as a powerful warning. If you believe their lives matter, subscribe now and stand with us. Thank you for watching. Be vigilant, and we'll continue our pursuit of truth in the next case.